Have you ever noticed how the kindest people are often the ones who end up exhausted, bruised, and quietly breaking inside? Kindness is beautiful until it becomes the reason you are emptied, ignored, or quietly used. I learned this the hard way, and maybe you have too. Today, let's look deeper. Stay with me. As we step into the first chapter, imagine walking into a room where everyone seems to rely on you a little more than they should. The weight is subtle at first, almost flattering, the way people turn to you because you're the steady one, the kind one, the person who never fails them. Yet beneath that quiet admiration, there is a soft trembling, a sense that something in you is being stretched thinner each day without anyone noticing. You smile, but a part of you wonders how long you can keep carrying what no one else sees. And this is where the ache begins, not in the moment others ask for your help, but in the moment you realize how naturally they assume you will say yes. Have you ever felt that expectation pressing against your chest? The silent belief that you will always give, always show up, always find a way, even when you are struggling yourself. Kind people rarely speak of this pressure out loud, yet it grows in the shadows of every generous act. The truth is simple. The more you give, the more the world quietly expects from you. And the more you expect that gentleness will return, the more you set yourself up for a quiet heartbreak. The Stoics saw this long before we did. Seneca warned that we must accept people as they are, not as our hopes paint them, for hope can distort our vision far more than disappointment ever could. When you give freely, something inside you, whether you admit it or not, assumes that others will one day give in return. But most people aren't cruel or ungrateful. They are simply wrapped in their own lives, blinded by their own responsibilities, and too consumed by their own struggles to notice how much you've offered. Kindness creates an illusion, a belief that your effort will be mirrored. But the world does not operate on that symmetry. Picture a man named Julian. He is the one everyone leans on, the co-worker who finishes other people's tasks when deadlines crush them, the friend who answers the phone at 2 in the morning, the son who quietly rearranges his own life to make space for others' needs. At first, Julian feels noble in this role, needed, appreciated. But over time, he begins to feel a shift. The thank yous become rare. The requests become heavier, and the people he supports start to treat his sacrifices not as kindness, but as normal, expected behavior. When Julian finally faces a crisis of his own, a sudden job loss or a moment of deep emotional exhaustion, he looks around and realizes that no one truly sees him. They assume he'll manage because he always has. They assume he doesn't need help because he never asked for it. They assume his strength is limitless because he never allowed them to witness his breaking point. And in that moment, something inside him quietly collapses. Not because others failed him, but because he spent years training them to believe he didn't need anything at all. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we should act without expecting anything in return, but he never said to abandon ourselves in the process. Self-neglect is not virtue. It is a slow unraveling of the spirit. When you constantly give without pause, you begin to create a dangerous imbalance, the kind that leaves you drained while others continue untouched. You think you are carrying people out of compassion, but often you are carrying them out of fear. Fear of being unloved, fear of being irrelevant, fear of being alone. Kindness becomes a shield you hide behind, hoping it will protect you from the world. Yet all it does is hollow you out. The Stoics understood this pattern well. They taught emotional separation not as coldness, but as clarity. You must care, yes, but you must also see things as they are. And the truth is that when you give too much, people stop noticing. They stop seeing the effort. They stop seeing the cost. You become a river they assume will always flow, a light they assume will always burn, a presence they assume will never falter, until the day you do. Let's step deeper into this. Think of all the moments you stayed late to help someone else, even as your own responsibilities piled up. Think of the times you said yes, even when every part of you longed for rest. Think of the times you told yourself, "It's fine, they need it more than I do," even though you desperately needed a moment to breathe. Slowly, quietly, you taught the world that your needs were optional, and when the world believes your needs are optional, it will never choose them. Not because people are heartless, but because they are human. They interpret your silence as strength, your endurance as certainty, your resilience as invulnerability. And you wonder why no one checks on you. But how could they? You've hidden the truth too well. Here's the hardest realization. People are not letting you down. They are doing exactly what the Stoics said all humans do. They are taking care of their own tasks. They are tending to their own lives. They are protecting their own stability. And you were supposed to do the same. Yet somewhere along the way, you forgot that your life also requires tending. Your heart also requires rest. Your mind also requires space. You cannot expect others to water your garden if you never let them see it exists. Now imagine yourself standing still for a moment. No giving, no fixing, no rescuing, just standing. In that stillness, you might finally hear the quiet truth you've been avoiding. Expectation is the first step toward disappointment. When you expect people to mirror your kindness, you set yourself up for pain. When you offer kindness freely while forgetting yourself, you step into a cycle that will consume you piece by piece. The Stoics remind us not to surrender our peace to the actions of others. And yet, every time you expect someone to repay your giving, you are placing your peace in their hands. This is where the chapter settles and where the next begins. Because once you see how dangerous it is to expect too much from people, you must confront a deeper truth. When you give too much for too long, people will start expecting even more. And that expectation holds a sharper edge than you realize. Advancing to the second chapter, picture a quiet morning where you wake up believing you're simply doing another good deed, yet the world around you has already decided something else about you. The moment you help once, they see you as helpful. The moment you help twice, they see you as reliable. But the moment you help 3 times, they begin to see you as responsible for every burden they no longer want to carry. It happens slowly, almost invisibly, like a vine wrapping itself around a tree until the tree forgets where its own branches begin. And before you know it, your kindness has turned into their expectation. They no longer see the effort. They only see the pattern. Have you ever felt that shift? That strange discomfort in your stomach when someone approaches you and you already know what they want before they speak? Not because they cherish you, but because they assume your yes is waiting for them. It's a quiet sting, one you rarely admit, because admitting it feels selfish. But the truth is simple. People grow accustomed to what is always offered. And once they adapt to your generosity, they will expect it, depend on it, and even shape their own habits around it. This is where the Stoics offered a warning wrapped in simplicity. Epictetus said that worth does not come from pleasing others, but from acting in harmony with reason. In that harmony lies balance, and without balance, even the purest virtue becomes a chain. From here, imagine standing in a familiar doorway watching the same people return to you again and again, not with gratitude, but with anticipation. Anticipation that you will solve another problem, carry another weight, clean up another mess they could have handled on their own. You feel the pull of their reliance tightening, and a part of you wonders when your generosity transformed into their comfort zone. The world often calls this kindness, but the Stoics would call it a distortion, a moment when your actions are no longer aligned with choice, but with habit, both theirs and yours. I once knew a man named Elias, the kind who helped everyone and asked for nothing. At first, people loved him for it. They praised his character, calling him dependable, loyal, the one they could count on. But over time, those compliments hardened into expectations. When someone needed a ride at midnight, they called Elias. When a co-worker avoided their own responsibilities, they left them for him to finish. When a family member faced the consequences of their own choices, they expected Elias to save them from the fallout. And whenever he hesitated, just hesitated, they looked at him with confusion, even irritation, as if he were betraying a silent contract he never agreed to. One evening, he finally asked himself a question he had avoided for years. Why am I the only one who notices my effort? And the answer came brutally clear, because he had trained everyone not to. People did not see his sacrifices, because he made them look effortless. They did not see his boundaries, because he never showed any. They did not see his fatigue, because he hid it behind service. Elias did not lose himself because others were selfish. He lost himself because he valued their needs more than his own. Seneca once said that if you do not value yourself, you will not convince the world to value you. This is where the blade cuts deepest. No one will come to you and say, "You've given enough, please rest." No one will pause in their comfort and declare, "Think of yourself for once." People guard their own peace instinctively. They do not surrender convenience willingly. And when your kindness shields them from discomfort, why would they ever encourage you to protect your own well-being? Your struggle is not visible to them because they are preoccupied with keeping their own lives intact. And that is not cruelty. That is human nature. At this stage, let's follow the thread even further. When you give too often, people stop seeing your effort as generosity and begin to see it as duty. The task they once appreciated becomes the task they now expect. The dependency they once felt grateful for becomes the dependency they cling to. And if you suddenly decide to step back, to reclaim your time, your energy, your dignity, they feel abandoned, even wronged. Why? Because you disrupted the pattern. And humans cling to patterns even when those patterns slowly destroy the person who maintains them. Now imagine a moment where you finally say no, not harshly, not angrily, just a quiet no. In that moment, you will witness a reaction that reveals everything: disappointment, frustration, offense, maybe even guilt-tripping. People rarely get upset because you refuse them. They get upset because your refusal forces them to face responsibilities they have been avoiding. You were their escape, their shortcut, their quiet advantage. And when you step out of the role they assigned you, the truth surfaces. They never valued your kindness. They valued the convenience your kindness provided. Here's where the Stoics bring clarity once again. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a person who acts from reason remains free, while a person who acts from compulsion becomes a slave to the expectations of others. When your giving is balanced, you remain in control. When your giving is excessive, you surrender that control. And once surrendered, others will not return it to you. You must reclaim it yourself. So ask yourself this: when was the last time you paused before saying yes? When was the last time you asked whether your action was choice or reflex? When was the last time you checked whether someone was relying on your strength instead of building their own? If the answers trouble you, good. Trouble is the beginning of awakening. Awakening is the beginning of freedom. This is where the chapter rests and prepares to turn. Because once you understand that people will expect your kindness endlessly if you let them, you must confront an even sharper truth. The more you abandon your own path, the more the world will ignore it entirely. And that leads us into the third chapter. Picture yourself returning to a path you once abandoned, seeing it with clearer eyes. You help, you fix, you listen, you show up. Yet each time you choose someone else over yourself, a small part of your own path fades into the background. It's subtle at first, almost harmless. The way your plans get postponed, then replaced, then forgotten. Until one day you look at your calendar and realize there is nothing on it that belongs to you. Just responsibilities borrowed from others. Just obligations you never meant to carry. And the weight of that realization hits quietly, the kind of heaviness that settles in the chest and whispers the truth. Your goals were never lost. You abandoned them piece by piece in the name of kindness. Now, imagine a quiet evening, the kind where the world slows down and you finally return home to an empty room. You drop your keys, sit in the silence, and for a moment you feel something unsettling, a faint discomfort, like you've been running from yourself. How many weekends have you filled with chores for others because you didn't want to face the stillness of your own thoughts? How many times have you volunteered to solve someone else's crisis because dealing with your own anxieties felt harder? There is a truth here, one the Stoics knew well. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a person who lives without order becomes scattered, not because life is cruel, but because he has not anchored himself to what truly matters. When you constantly choose others' needs over your own, you drift. And the drifting is silent but relentless. From here, a deeper layer emerges. Many people believe they are being noble when they sacrifice their goals for others, but often this sacrifice hides something far more personal. Sometimes we bury our ambitions not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of failing, fear of confronting our own desires, fear of discovering who we might become if we truly tried. Helping others becomes a convenient disguise, a way of appearing useful while avoiding the mirror that waits for us at home. Seneca warned that a person who does not govern himself becomes a servant to circumstance. And this is the moment his words become painfully relevant. If you spend your life running to fix external fires, you never have to face the quiet flame inside you that asks harder questions. Who are you without the tasks? What remains when the noise fades? Let me tell you about a woman named Leora. She was the one who always arrived first when someone needed assistance. She helped friends move, watched their children, listened for hours to their heartaches, cooked meals when they were overwhelmed. People adored her for her generosity, but none of them knew the truth she carried. Each time she entered someone else's life to help, she escaped the silence of her own. Her apartment remained cluttered, her dreams remained untouched, her plans remained theoretical. She always told herself she would return to them after things settle, but things never settled because she never settled herself. One Sunday, she spent the entire day cleaning someone else's home. When she returned to her own that night, she stood in the middle of her living room and finally saw it. Dust on the shelves, unfinished books on the table, unopened letters, dreams left waiting in corners like forgotten belongings. And for the first time in years, she realized she had poured her life into everyone else's cup while letting her own run dry. This is where the Stoic principle of self-stewardship becomes essential. Epictetus taught that we must guard our inner world as carefully as a farmer guards fertile land. If you spend all your time tending other people's fields, your own soil grows barren. Your goals, your well-being, your growth, they require tending, effort, intention. And no one will do it for you. People may thank you for your kindness, but they will not build your life for you. They are too busy trying to build their own. At this stage, consider a simple question. When was the last time you did something purely because it nourished you, not because it pleased someone else, not because it impressed anyone, not because it filled a gap in someone else's schedule, but because it made you feel alive? Did you enjoy a book? Take a walk at your own pace. Create something just for yourself. The world romanticizes self-sacrifice, but the Stoics remind us that empty vessels cannot pour without breaking. Self-care is not a luxury. It is discipline. It is clarity. It is survival. You cannot offer someone a piece of chocolate if you have never tasted sweetness yourself. You cannot clean someone else's home when you are drowning in your own dust. You cannot pour peace into another life while letting your soul remain scattered. Here's where the internal conflict sharpens. When you constantly abandon your goals, something inside you begins to ache with a quiet resentment. Not toward others, but toward yourself. You begin to feel restless, irritated, drained. And you may think it is because the world is taking too much from you, but often it is because you are giving too little to yourself. Life becomes heavy when you live against your own nature. Seneca wrote that nothing burdens the spirit more than a life lived for others without ever living for oneself. Those words echo deeply here. From here, imagine a small shift. You wake up one morning and choose to start with yourself. You tidy your space. You complete one task that belongs only to you. You take a moment to breathe without rushing to serve. And something remarkable happens. The world does not collapse. People learn to adjust. Responsibilities redistribute. And in that quiet space you carved for yourself, you finally hear your own thoughts again. Your dreams stretch their limbs like they've been waiting for you. The life that was once buried begins to breathe. This is where the chapter finds its closing truth. When you place yourself last, the world will follow your example. When you place yourself first with intention and virtue, the world learns to meet you there. Your goals matter. Your well-being matters. Your identity matters. And the moment you honor them, the rest of your life begins to align. Because if ignoring your own path leads you to drift, then honoring it is the only way to return to shore. And that brings us into the fourth chapter. Entering the fourth chapter, imagine walking into a room where everyone's eyes turn toward you, not with admiration, but with assumption. They assume you will carry the extra load. They assume you will say yes. They assume you will stay late. Step in, smooth things over, fix whatever others refuse to face. And beneath those assumptions lies a sharper truth, one most kind people never want to admit. When you give too much without limits, the world does not see you as strong. It quietly marks you as weak. Not weak in character, not weak in intention, but weak in boundaries. And in the eyes of those who rely on your softness, that weakness becomes an invitation. Now imagine the weight of that realization settling in your chest. Think of the moment you finally notice that someone is handing you their responsibilities, not because they trust you, but because they know you won't refuse. There is a sting in that awareness, a cold clarity, the kind that forces you to see your generous nature through a different lens. You have become the easy option, the fallback plan, The person they call not because they value you, but because you are predictable. Your yes is predictable. Your silence is predictable. Your self-sacrifice is predictable. And that predictability becomes a doorway for exploitation. From here, the Stoics step into the room like a voice cutting through fog. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a person who governs himself earns respect, while one who surrenders his choices becomes governed by others. Strength, to the Stoics, was not loud or aggressive. It was the quiet discipline of knowing where you end and where the world begins. Kindness without limits is not virtue, it is surrender. And people instinctively sense when someone has surrendered. They may praise your generosity, but behind their praise, they see your vulnerability. They see the part of you that cannot refuse, and human nature gravitates not toward fairness, but toward convenience. At this stage, picture a man named Taran. He was known in his workplace as the dependable one, the fixer, the calm presence who could solve problems others avoided. People admired him at first. They complimented his competence, his patience, his willingness to help. But slowly, the admiration shifted. When someone wanted to escape a difficult task, they brought it to Taran. When someone felt overwhelmed, they left their half-finished work on his desk. When someone wanted to avoid confrontation with a superior, they asked him to step in. And because Taran feared disappointing people, he agreed every time. One afternoon, a colleague dropped a stack of reports onto his desk and said with a casual confidence, "You're better at this anyway. No request, no question, just expectation." And that was the day Taran realized something he had refused to see. He was no longer being respected. He was being used. His kindness had become a cage. Seneca once warned that when you fail to mark your own boundaries, the world will happily decide them for you. That warning echoes powerfully in moments like Taran's. When you never say no, people assume you cannot say no. When you never push back, people assume you have nothing worth protecting. When you never draw a line, people assume you have none. And once they see you as the person who absorbs everything, they will continue to give you what they no longer want to hold. Not because they are cruel, but because you trained them to see you that way. From here, let the truth sharpen further. People treat you based on the signals you send. If your signal is, "I can handle it," they will give you more. If your signal is, "I don't want to upset anyone," they will ask you for everything. If your signal is, "My needs come last," they will help you place them there. This is the brutal simplicity of human interaction. Respect is not given to the most helpful person. It is given to the person with the clearest limits. The moment you say no with calm conviction, something shifts. The people who once viewed you as an endless resource suddenly feel the tension of resistance, and in that tension, respect is born. Now imagine this moment vividly. You look someone in the eye and say the word they never expected from you. No. No explanation, no apology, just clarity. At first, they blink, confused. Then they search your face, trying to understand whether this is temporary or real, and the longer you hold your ground, the more quickly they adjust. You can almost see it happen, the quiet recalibration of how they view you. The fear of disappointing them begins to fade. The fear of betraying yourself begins to dissolve. Your voice steadies. Your presence strengthens. And for the first time in a long time, your kindness no longer feels like a burden. It feels like a choice. Epictetus reminded us that no one can diminish you unless you offer them the opportunity. When you set limits, you withdraw that invitation. You remind the world that you are not a vessel for their convenience. You are a person with your own responsibilities, your own ideals, your own life. And when people recognize that you protect your time and energy, they begin to treat both with more care. Respect grows where clarity stands. At this stage, think about the moments in your own life when you avoided the word no. The invitations you accepted out of guilt. The tasks you agreed to out of fear. The late nights you spent fixing problems that were never yours. And ask yourself, did those moments make people love you more, or did they make you feel smaller? Kindness without boundaries does not elevate you, it erodes you. But kindness paired with strength becomes something far greater. It becomes dignity. Here's where the chapter settles into its final truth. People will only treat you as weak when you teach them that you do not protect yourself. But the moment you begin guarding your time, your energy, your inner balance, their perception changes. They see the strength beneath your gentleness. They see the resolve behind your silence. And they learn that your kindness is not something they can consume. It is something they must honor. Because once you reclaim your voice, the world begins to adjust to its power. And that clarity guides us straight into the 5th chapter. At this stage, imagine walking through your own life as if it were a marketplace, the kind where people wave you over only when they want something from your hands, never when they simply want your presence. You begin to notice a pattern in the faces around you, a subtle shift in the way they appear, only when convenience calls them forward. Their timing is precise. They show up when they are thirsty and disappear the moment their cup is full. And as this pattern repeats, a quiet heaviness grows inside you, a heaviness made not of anger but of realization. You start to see the truth that has always been there. Not everyone in your life came for you. Many came for what you give. Now imagine a late evening when your phone lights up with a familiar name. You feel that instinctive hope, the tiny flicker that whispers, maybe this time they simply want to talk. But the moment you open the message, you see the same pattern again. A request, a need, a favor disguised as friendship. And something in your chest tightens. Not because you are unwilling to help, but because you suddenly realize how predictable the interaction has become. They reach out when they need, not when they care. And you, out of habit, have been answering as if both were the same. Here's where the Stoics enter quietly, offering clarity without judgment. Seneca warned that we must choose whom we help with discernment, for indiscriminate giving drains the soul and misguides the world. Generosity is noble, but unchecked generosity becomes an invitation for misuse. People by nature respond to patterns, and if your pattern is unwavering availability, they will anchor themselves to it until they no longer see you as a person, just a function. From here, let's step into a scene many of us know too well. A man named Corin, kind-hearted and steady, believed he was surrounded by genuine friends. They laughed at his jokes, invited him to gatherings, called him brother, and spoke as if loyalty were woven into their words. But as time passed, the invitations grew selective. The laughter continued only when he was giving, and the conversations came only when they needed something done, money borrowed, rides requested, problems unloaded onto his already burdened shoulders. 1 month, Corin decided to test a quiet suspicion inside him. He stopped initiating, he stopped offering, he stopped doing the small favors that had glued these relationships together, and slowly, every one of them vanished. His phone went silent, his circle evaporated, his absence revealed a truth his presence had masked. They did not want him. They wanted access to him. It's a painful truth. But pain, as Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself, is a teacher disguised as an intruder. And what pain teaches here is simple. People who never show up, except when they need something, were never with you to begin with. They were with the comfort they found in you. They were with the benefits your kindness offered. They were with the version of you who always says yes. And the moment that version steps away, their loyalty dissolves like mist. At this stage, let the image sharpen further. Imagine walking into a cafe and noticing that everyone inside sits with people they truly value. Family, real friends, partners, companions bound by mutual care. You look at the tables and realize with sudden clarity that if some of the people you help were in this room, you would not be seated with them. They would not invite you. They would wave politely and continue their conversations, because their connection to you was never rooted in affection. It was rooted in advantage. This realization is not meant to make you bitter. It is meant to make you wise. Wisdom, in the Stoic sense, is the ability to see clearly without resentment. Epictetus taught that we should observe the nature of people as it is, not as we wish it to be. When you recognize that someone only enters your life through the doorway of need, you are not required to shame them or exile them. You are simply required to stop confusing their role. Here's where the transformation begins. When you stop mistaking opportunists for friends, something in you shifts. You begin to reclaim the hours you once spent catering to those who would not cross a room for you. You begin to see your own value more clearly, and as your discernment grows, your peace begins to expand. You start to choose carefully. You start to say no calmly. You start to recognize that your time is not an open field for others to harvest. It is your responsibility to guard. From here, consider the logical truth the Stoics emphasized. People do not treat their employees or co-workers like close companions. They do not invite subordinates to intimate gatherings. They do not build emotional closeness with those they see only as assets. So why would someone who treats you like convenience suddenly treat you like family? They won't. And if you look closely, you already know that. What you've been experiencing makes sense, not because it is fair, but because it follows the natural shape of human behavior. Now imagine a moment of clarity rising like a slow sunrise. You see the faces of those who only come with empty hands and leave with full pockets, pockets lined with your time, your attention, your energy. You feel the pull to continue helping them out of habit, out of kindness, out of hope. But a stronger truth rises inside you, one born from experience. You cannot blame people for taking advantage of doors you refuse to close. This is where Stoic strength becomes essential. You must stand guard at the gate of your life, not with hostility, but with wisdom. Not with anger, but with discernment. Those who come only to take should be met with a calm boundary. Those who come only in convenience should be met with distance. Those who come only with needs should not be offered more than you can afford to lose. Because once you recognize the pattern, you hold the power to break it. And that clarity leads us straight into the 6th chapter. Entering the 6th chapter, imagine standing in a crowded room where voices rise and fall, where people drift between conversations, where smiles come and go like flickering lanterns. You watch as some move toward you with quick steps and eager eyes, while others never approach unless their hands are empty and their needs are heavy. And in that moment, as you observe the shifting patterns of closeness and distance, something becomes painfully clear. The people who seek you out are not always seeking you. Many are seeking what you offer, what you give, what you sacrifice without noticing. And the more you give without pause, the more you attract those who arrive only to take. Now imagine a quiet morning after a long week of doing favors for everyone who asked and everyone who didn't. You sit by your window with a cup of something warm, expecting peace, but instead feeling a strange hollowness inside your chest. That emptiness is not from lack of kindness, it is from the kind of kindness that drains instead of nourishes. You begin to wonder why certain people seem drawn to your life so persistently, while others who carry generosity, clarity, and strength rarely come close. Something about that pattern feels familiar, almost predictable, like a river whose flow has been forced into the wrong direction. From here, the Stoics step forward with a truth as old as human nature itself. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. What you carry inside, your clarity or your confusion, your peace or your exhaustion, shapes the people who find their way to you. The world recognizes your internal state long before you speak it aloud. A steady spirit draws steady souls. A restless spirit draws restless ones. And a depleted spirit, one that is constantly pouring, constantly giving, constantly bending, draws people who expect the bending as if it were your natural shape. At this stage, picture a woman named Althea. She had a warm heart, a generous presence, and a gentleness that made others feel safe. But that gentleness, unguarded and unbalanced, became a signal to the wrong kind of people. Friends came to her only when they needed comfort. Co-workers approached only when their deadlines suffocated them. Even distant relatives reappeared whenever something in their lives fell apart. Althea told herself this meant she was useful, valued, wanted. But one day, after a long series of sleepless nights spent fixing the problems of others, she realized something devastating. The people who reached out to her never offered support in return. She was a shelter in storms she did not create, a lantern carried only into darkness, never into celebration. Her presence was sought only by those who needed refuge, never by those who came to give light back to her. This is where Stoic insight deepens. Seneca warned that without restraint, even virtue becomes self-destruction. The more Althea gave, the more drained she became. And the more drained she became, the more she unknowingly signaled weakness to those who fed on easy kindness. Exhaustion dulls judgment. Exhaustion softens boundaries. Exhaustion calls out to opportunists, like a dim light calls out to moths. And just as moths do not seek beauty but flame, these people do not seek connection, they seek access. From here, imagine yourself standing at a crossroads inside your own life. To one side are people who resonate with balance, responsibility, and mutual respect. To the other side are those who sense your generosity as an opening, an unguarded doorway through which they can quietly take what they need. Human connection, despite how poetic it sounds, often forms through alignment. People sense your internal state the way sailors sense wind patterns. If your inner world is chaotic or depleted, those who thrive on chaos will drift toward you. If your inner world is grounded and firm, those who respect boundaries will walk beside you. Here's where a difficult truth rises. When you give endlessly, you weaken your own foundation. And when your foundation weakens, you attract people who feel comfortable standing on top of it. Not because they intend to harm you, but because they recognize a space where they can take without contributing. A depleted soul shines differently. It does not repel opportunists, it draws them in. And once they arrive, they do not ask whether you have enough strength left. They simply take what remains. Now imagine a shift beginning inside you. You start choosing more carefully. You start pausing before offering your time, your energy, your efforts. You start leaning toward people whose actions, not their needs, define the relationship. Slowly, a new pattern emerges. Those who came only to take begin to fade. Those who valued you only as a resource quietly withdraw. And into that empty space left behind, something unexpected begins to grow. People whose presence feels lighter, steadier, warmer. People who do not drain you, but expand you. People who do not appear only in their storms, but also in your sunlight. Epictetus taught that we must stand guard at the entrance of our minds, choosing what we allow in with the same caution a wise traveler uses when choosing companions. He understood that relationships shape the spirit, and if we do not choose carefully, we inherit not only the burdens of others, but their misalignment. When you protect your internal balance, you attract others who carry their own balance. When you live with intention, you attract people who respect intention. When you guard your energy, you invite those who know how to guard their own. At this stage, reflect on the pattern of those who have entered your life. Who came giving? Who came taking? Who stayed when you had nothing to offer? Who disappeared the moment you stopped making things easy? The answers to those questions reveal not the nature of the world, but the nature of what you allowed. Here's where the message sharpens. You cannot choose who knocks on the door of your life, but you can choose who enters. And when you finally choose with clarity, the entire shape of your life begins to change. You move from attracting opportunists to attracting equals, from carrying people to walking with them, from being consumed to being met. Because once you guard the energy within you, you stop drawing those who seek to feed on it. And that shift guides us straight into the 7th chapter. Entering the 7th chapter, imagine walking through your days carrying a quiet exhaustion you cannot quite explain, the kind that lingers behind your ribs like a faint ache that never fully leaves. You tell yourself you are simply tired, simply overworked, simply stressed. But beneath that surface, something far more dangerous has begun to grow, slowly, subtly, silently. It begins as a habit, a small comfort you turn to when you feel drained from giving too much. A drink at night, a snack you don't really want, a distraction you promise is temporary, and before you realize it, the comfort becomes a craving, and the craving becomes a chain. This is how many people slip into addictions, not because they are weak, but because they are empty. Now imagine coming home after a long day spent tending to everyone else's needs, your energy stretched thin, your mind buzzing, your heart quietly bruised. You stand in your kitchen or sit in your car, and there is a moment where you feel swallowed by the weight of everything you have poured out. That is the moment when temptation whispers, just one drink to relax, just one escape to forget, just one indulgence to soothe what the world has eroded. But that one moment becomes two, and two becomes a pattern, and the pattern becomes a refuge you never meant to build. And behind that refuge hides a truth the Stoics warned about endlessly. When you do not govern your own life, something else will. From here, let the teachings of the Stoics deepen like a tide rising around your feet. Epictetus taught that freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want, but the ability to resist whatever seeks to control you. And nothing controls more quietly than the comforts we reach for during exhaustion. When your life is constantly depleted, when you give more than you restore, you create the perfect soil for harmful habits to grow. You do not seek pleasure, you seek escape. You do not seek indulgence, you seek silence. You do not even want the thing you're consuming, you want the feeling of not feeling. And that is how a person becomes hooked. At this stage, consider a man named Dorian. He spent years helping everyone around him, family, friends, co-workers, neighbors. He solved their problems with patience, carried their stress with loyalty, and hid his own struggles behind a polite smile. People admired him, praised him, turned to him, but no one truly saw him. And because no one saw him, he began to disappear into small habits he told himself were harmless. A drink every night to unwind. Then the bottle became part of the evening ritual. His friends still came to him when they needed something, and he still helped them, but his spirit was breaking quietly beneath the weight. One evening, a close friend noticed the dullness in Dorian's eyes and said softly, "You're not yourself lately." Dorian's first instinct was anger, defensiveness, denial, the familiar heat of shame. But deep down, he knew the truth. His habit was not the problem. His emptiness was. Seneca warned that the person who does not confront his own suffering will try to outrun it, but the thing he runs from always runs faster. Dorian's drinking was not the issue. It was the escape. The escape from loneliness, the escape from exhaustion, the escape from being everyone's foundation but his own. And like many who give endlessly, he fell into a quiet dependency, one built not from desire, but from depletion. Here's where the Stoic message sharpens. When shortage becomes your daily reality, when your time, energy, and spirit are constantly drained, your hunger for comfort grows, and unchecked hunger becomes addiction. Not always addiction to substances, sometimes addiction to distraction, addiction to noise, addiction to being needed, addiction to doing everything for everyone else so you never have to face your own reflection. There are endless ways to drown. Not all of them look dangerous. Now, imagine someone close to you noticing the signs. They tell you gently that you seem different. They say you're drinking more, eating more, gambling more, scrolling endlessly, numbing yourself in ways that look small but feel enormous inside. Your first reaction is irritation, the snap of pride wounded. "I'm fine. You're exaggerating. It's not a big deal." These are the defenses people raise, not because they believe them, but because the truth is too heavy to hold. But look deeper. The ones who dare speak up are often the only ones who truly care. They risk your anger because they see the cliff you're approaching, and they try to pull you back even when you want to run. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a person who cannot face his own soul cannot be free, and this is where the path splits. You can continue numbing yourself until the habit becomes a master you cannot defy, or you can pause long enough to hear the warning, a voice from someone who loves you, a voice from within, a voice from wisdom calling you back to yourself. At this stage, picture yourself standing between two mirrors. One shows who you become when you keep escaping, the version of you slowly losing shape, drifting farther from clarity. The other mirror shows who you become when you take back your discipline, the version who chooses awareness over avoidance, strength over impulse, presence over escape. Which one feels more painful? Which one feels more honest? Which one feels more alive? Here's where the transformation begins. Addiction loses its grip the moment you stop running and start seeing. Once you face the emptiness, you can fill it. Once you face the exhaustion, you can heal it. Once you face the runaway habit, you can reclaim it. The Stoics never taught perfection. They taught mastery. Mastery over impulses, mastery over habits, mastery over yourself. And that mastery begins not with punishment, but with honesty. From here, the message settles. You did not become hooked because you are weak. You became hooked because you were depleted. But depletion is not destiny. You can rebuild the strength you lost. You can restore the discipline you abandoned. You can repair the relationship between your choices and your well-being. And when you do, the pull of unhealthy comforts fades like smoke. Because the moment you return to yourself, nothing outside you can control you again. And that clarity carries us straight into the 8th chapter. Entering the 8th chapter, imagine walking into a room with a gentleness so rare that people pause, not because they admire it, but because they don't know what to make of it. Kindness, when honest and uncalculated, should feel warm. But in a world where genuine intentions have become scarce, true kindness often triggers suspicion instead of gratitude. You offer help, and instead of hearing thank you, you see raised eyebrows. You extend your hand, and people lean back ever so slightly, wondering what you might want. It is a strange and painful irony. The more sincere you are, the more some will doubt you. And that doubt enters the room long before you say a single word. Now imagine walking through your life, noticing how people take a second glance at you when you help without seeking recognition. You can feel it, the way they wonder why you're being nice, what hidden plan you have, what motive sits behind your smile. They question your intentions simply because most people have learned to hide theirs. And in a world where manipulation has become common currency, honesty looks suspicious. This isn't your fault. It is the nature of a society that has forgotten how to trust. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we must live in truth regardless of how others perceive us, because perception belongs to them, not to us. But knowing that does not erase the sting of being misunderstood. From here, imagine offering help to someone who seems overwhelmed. Instead of gratitude, you catch a flicker of distrust, as if your gesture were a trap. They hesitate. They watch you closely. They wonder what you're really after. And slowly, you begin to realize that your kindness places you in an uncomfortable category, one reserved for the few who are sincere and the many who pretend to be. The world has seen enough masks to suspect every unmasked face. You may be the rare person who wants nothing in return, but because such people are rare, others brace for impact anyway. At this stage, let's step into a story. A man named Iason was known for his helpfulness. He didn't boast, didn't expect favors, didn't keep score. He simply helped because it was in his nature. But one day, a co-worker asked him with an uneasy tone, "Why are you always so willing? What's in it for you?" The question hit him like a cold wind. He had never been asked that before. He laughed it off, but the question followed him home. He began to see how often people hesitated when he offered assistance. Some even whispered behind his back, wondering what he was plotting. But he was plotting nothing. His only flaw was being genuine in a place where genuineness had become unbelievable. Seneca once warned that the good man is often doubted because he is unlike the crowd, and that truth fits here with painful precision. When people see someone who helps freely, they suspect hidden motives because they themselves have seen too many who help only to gain advantage. Some even assume that intense kindness must hide darkness because their experience has taught them that no one gives without wanting power or praise. And while this view is unfair, it is also honest. It reflects the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. From here, imagine the emotional toll this takes on you. You open your heart, and instead of warmth, you're met with suspicion. You offer support, and instead of appreciation, you're met with caution. It's enough to make anyone retreat, to shrink into themselves, to give less. But Stoicism teaches otherwise. It tells us to act with virtue regardless of recognition. It reminds us that the opinions of others, especially when shaped by fear or cynicism, are not reflections of our truth. Our duty is to live according to our principles, not according to others' assumptions. As we move deeper into this chapter, consider another layer of reality. When someone distrusts your kindness, it may not be because you are suspicious. It may be because they are. People who rely on manipulation assume everyone else does too. People who use kindness as currency assume everyone else does the same. People who hide their true intentions assume every gesture hides something. Once you see this, their suspicion begins to make sense, not because it is fair, but because it mirrors their worldview. And recognizing this frees you from internalizing their mistrust. Here's where Stoic clarity becomes essential. You do not control how others interpret your actions. You only control the integrity behind them. If someone doubts you, that doubt belongs to them. If someone questions your motives, their question reflects their own history, not your character. And if someone cannot recognize kindness without suspecting malice, that is a wound they carry, one you are not responsible for healing. At this stage, imagine stepping back and observing the pattern from above. You begin to see that suspicion is not always hostility. Sometimes it is honesty. Sometimes it is self-protection. Sometimes it is simply the result of living in a world that has made trust difficult. The Stoics teach us to give without expecting applause, to act without demanding validation, and to remain steady even when others waver. Your kindness does not need to be understood to remain pure, but this does not mean you should allow everyone access to your generosity. This is where wisdom must meet virtue. You must watch who steps toward you and who steps away. You must recognize who comes with open hands and who comes with open motives. You must learn to distinguish between those who are cautious because of their past and those who are cautious because they hide their own intentions. And once you see the distinction, your path becomes clearer. From here, the transition forms naturally. After recognizing how your kindness can provoke suspicion, the Stoics invite you into something far more important: the practices that protect your energy. They remind you to listen to your feelings because your discomfort is a messenger. They urge you to embrace the power of a calm, firm no because boundaries are freedom. They tell you to guard your time and create sacred space for yourself because your life is not an open field for others to wander through. And they show you how to recognize those who drain you so you can walk away with dignity, not bitterness. Each of these strategies becomes the shield that preserves your kindness instead of allowing the world to twist it. Because once you understand how people may misinterpret your intentions, you become ready to protect your own. And that opens the door to the strategies that follow. Strategies that will teach you not only how to keep people from taking advantage of you, but how to stay whole in a world that often misunderstands the gentle. There comes a moment in every journey when the truth settles quietly on your shoulders. After seeing how misplaced kindness can drain you, bend you, and sometimes even break you, you begin to understand something essential. Awareness alone is not enough. Knowing why you've been exhausted does not automatically restore your strength. Understanding how others used you does not rebuild the boundaries they wore down. Insight is only the first step. What follows is the harder part, the rebuilding, the choosing, the reshaping of the way you walk through the world. As you stand here holding the weight of everything you've learned, a new question rises. Now that you see how kindness can ruin your life, how do you transform it into something that protects you instead? How do you give without losing yourself? How do you stay open-hearted without being open-walled? This is where the path shifts, not away from kindness, but toward a wiser version of it. A version shaped by strength, balance, and clarity. a version the Stoics lived by. And as this shift begins to take root within you, imagine the quiet moment after a long storm, the kind where you finally look around and realize you've spent years surviving rather than living. The chaos of giving too much has passed. The weight of being used has loosened its grip. And now you stand in a clearing where the air is different, lighter, clearer, unfamiliar. It is in this stillness that a deeper truth rises. After everything you've endured, you are finally ready to learn how to give without breaking yourself. This is where your strength begins to reshape itself. Now imagine holding your own life in your hands for the first time, really holding it. Not as something that can wait until others are satisfied. Not as something to return to when the world is done needing you, but as something precious that must be protected. The feeling is strange, almost foreign, because you've spent so long putting yourself last that prioritizing your own well-being feels like rebellion. And, in a way, it is. It is rebellion against the old version of you, the version who believed that self-neglect was virtue, the version who thought that the more you disappeared, the more lovable you would become, the version who learned the hard way that kindness without wisdom becomes a magnet for the wrong kind of people. From here, the Stoics step beside you like quiet companions. Marcus Aurelius reminds you that the soul becomes its choices, and now your choices finally begin to pivot inward, toward the direction of your own growth. Seneca whispers that true generosity must start with the self, because the person who is empty inside cannot offer anything the world can safely hold. And Epictetus, firm as ever, nudges you forward by reminding you that your first and greatest duty is to guard your inner world. These teachings become your compass, pointing toward a new way of living, one rooted not in depletion, but in deliberate strength. At this stage, picture a man named Vale. For years, he moved through life like a shadow behind the needs of others. Every crisis, every emergency, every emotional burden found its way to his doorstep. And he accepted them all, believing his worth came from being indispensable. But when his life eventually collapsed from the weight, something finally shifted. He realized that living for others had kept him from ever living at all. So he began small. He woke earlier, not to help someone, but to walk alone before sunrise. He declined favors that drained him. He asked himself questions he had avoided for years, like, what do I want and what do I need? At first, the answers frightened him. Then they empowered him. Slowly, he rebuilt a self he had forgotten he had. His transformation did not happen in noise. It happened in quiet, intentional steps, the very steps you are taking now. Here's where the chapter deepens. When you begin choosing yourself, something remarkable happens. The world reorganizes itself around your strength. The people who used you lose interest. The people who respect you step closer. Your boundaries become clearer. Your days become calmer. And your life begins to align with a simple Stoic truth. You cannot control who enters your life, but you can control who stays. This newfound clarity allows you to see relationships not as obligations, but as choices. It reveals the difference between those who value your presence and those who value your service. It shows you who walks beside you and who stands behind you only when they need a push forward. Now imagine the fire inside you returning, not the wild, chaotic fire of anger or exhaustion, but a steady flame, one that warms you from within. You begin to feel your own strength again. You begin to hear your own thoughts. You begin to trust your own instincts. And most importantly, you begin to understand that protecting your energy is not selfishness. It is stewardship. The world cannot benefit from a version of you that is always exhausted, always resentful, always drained. The world needs the version of you that stands firmly in yourself, the version that gives by choice, not compulsion. From here, imagine walking through your day with a new awareness. You notice where your energy rises and where it sinks. You notice who encourages your growth and who quietly suffocates it. You notice when your spirit feels light and when it feels violated. This awareness is not judgment. It is observation, the very skill the Stoics considered sacred. With observation comes discernment. With discernment comes strength. And with strength comes the ability to give in a way that lifts you instead of eroding you. Here's where the transformation reaches its core. You begin to understand that giving must be measured, intentional, and honest. When you give from fullness, your presence becomes powerful. When you give from emptiness, your presence becomes vulnerable. So you start choosing differently. You give wisdom instead of rescuing. You give support instead of obedience. You give time without sacrificing your life. You give love without giving yourself away. And each of these choices builds a new version of you, one grounded in dignity rather than depletion. At this stage, imagine standing on the threshold of a life where kindness no longer hurts you. You are no longer the person who says yes to avoid guilt. No longer the person who sacrifices everything just to be seen. No longer the person who believes that love must be earned through exhaustion. Instead, you have become someone who embodies a different kind of generosity, the generosity of presence, of clarity, of strength. The kind of kindness that does not apologize for protecting itself. And here the chapter comes to its quiet close. You have stepped out of the shadows of over-giving and into the light of deliberate living. This is the beginning of a new path, one where your kindness becomes sharper, wiser, and far more powerful. And now that you have reclaimed the right to protect your own energy, you are ready for what comes next, a lesson that sharpens every part of your life. Moving into the next chapter, imagine a long road stretching before you, quiet, open, untouched, after years of walking paths carved by other people's expectations. The dust has finally settled behind you, and for the first time you see the space in front of you clearly. This is the moment when a new truth steps forward. If you want your life to rise from exhaustion into strength, you must learn the art of choosing what deserves your attention. Not everything, not everyone, only what aligns with who you intend to become. And that shift, subtle as it seems, changes the very texture of your days. As the previous storms fade, you begin to notice something that was always there but hidden beneath the noise. Your mind becomes a landscape you can actually walk through. Thoughts appear with shape instead of chaos. Feelings surface with names instead of confusion. You start seeing where your energy goes, and more importantly, where it leaks. And in that gentle awareness, a question rises like dawn over a quiet horizon. What if life becomes easier, not by doing more, but by choosing less? What if power comes not from effort, but from intention? From here, you step closer to the wisdom the Stoics guarded so fiercely. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning that the quality of your life depends on the quality of your attention. Epictetus taught that the person who masters choice masters destiny. Seneca wrote that the worst waste is the waste of energy on things that do not matter. And now, standing at this new threshold, their words begin to make sense in a way they never did before. You start to see that your attention is not just a mental tool, it is the gatekeeper of your peace. At this stage, picture someone like Mara. She spent years saying yes to everything, believing her worth was tied to how helpful she appeared. Her calendar was always full, her mind always cluttered, her heart always tired. She helped until there was nothing left in her for herself. But when she finally paused, when she stopped rushing long enough to actually see her life, she realized how much of it was shaped by the needs of others and how little of it reflected her own direction. So she began to choose differently. She said no to obligations that stole her peace. She declined conversations that drained her spirit. She stepped back from people whose presence always demanded a piece of her. At first, she feared losing connections, but instead she found clarity. Her days became lighter, her mind steadier, and for the first time in years, she felt a small but unmistakable spark growing inside her, the spark of someone reclaiming themselves. Now imagine applying that same quiet courage to your own life. You begin filtering what enters your mind, the way a guard filters who enters a sacred temple. You allow in what strengthens you. You refuse what disturbs your balance. You learn to walk away from noise disguised as urgency, from people disguised as friends, from demands disguised as responsibilities. This is not coldness. This is discernment, the virtue the Stoics believed separated the wise from the merely kind. Here's where the chapter deepens. Many people assume that setting limits is an act of control, but in truth, it is an act of liberation. When you choose where your attention goes, you free yourself from being tossed around by every emotion, request, or expectation that crosses your path. You stop living as a reaction and start living as a direction. You stop giving out of guilt and start giving out of strength. You stop allowing people to pull you into their chaos and instead require them to meet you in your clarity. From here, imagine your life as a vessel. When it is full of distractions, there is no space for wisdom. When it is full of noise, there is no space for insight. When it is full of obligations that were never yours to carry, there is no space for purpose. The Stoics knew this and crafted their entire way of life around a single principle: protect your inner world at all costs, not with walls of stone, but with the quiet discipline of choosing what truly deserves space within you. As you walk deeper into this new understanding, you begin to see the subtle ways your energy is influenced. A single careless conversation steals your calm for hours. A thoughtless request pulls you away from what matters. A person who refuses to manage their own life suddenly spills their disorder into yours. But now, instead of accepting it blindly, you begin to recognize the pattern. You begin to choose differently. You begin to reclaim every small piece of peace you once surrendered. At this stage, a powerful transformation begins. You notice that when your attention sharpens, your life sharpens with it. You stop chasing validation, you stop seeking permission. You stop apologizing for not being available to everyone. People who once relied on your endless yes begin to adjust. Some become uncomfortable, some fade away. Some grow angry because you are no longer easy to use, but others, those who respect strength, step closer. Those who honor your boundaries meet you with their own. Those who once overlooked your effort begin to see your worth more clearly. This shift is not just external, it reshapes your identity from the inside out. Here's where the message sharpens. Attention is the architect of your life. What you focus on grows. What you ignore loses power. What you allow becomes your reality. And when you finally aim your attention toward what builds you rather than what drains you, something extraordinary happens. You stop merely surviving the world and begin shaping your place within it. Now imagine the road ahead, illuminated not by obligation, but by intention. You are no longer wandering through other people's paths. You are choosing your own footing, your own pace, your own direction. Each step becomes deliberate. Each choice becomes meaningful. Each moment becomes an opportunity to strengthen the life you are building instead of repairing the life you abandoned. And as this clarity settles into your bones, a new question rises. If focus can reshape your inner world, what happens when discipline begins to reshape your outer world? That question leads us into the next chapter. Advancing to the next chapter, imagine standing at the doorway of your own life with new clarity in your eyes, seeing not just what drains you, but also what strengthens you. The dust from past disappointments has settled, and now the path ahead demands a deeper shift. One that begins not with discipline over your time or your attention, but with the reconstruction of your identity. This is where the real work begins. The work of remembering who you were before you scattered yourself across the needs of everyone else. Now imagine walking through a familiar place, your home, your street, your workplace, and everything looks the same on the outside, yet something is profoundly different inside you. You notice how often you shrink your voice so others feel comfortable. You see how easily you step aside so someone else can take the lead. You feel how frequently you swallow your own needs because you fear being seen as demanding. These realizations sting, not because you failed, but because you finally see the quiet ways you abandoned yourself. And in that sting, a truth begins to rise. You cannot build a strong life on a weak identity. From here, the Stoics speak with a firmness that steadies the heart. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that a person's worth is not defined by the approval of the crowd, but by the alignment of one's soul with reason and virtue. Seneca warned that a man who does not stand firm in his own principles becomes clay in the hands of others. And Epictetus declared that no one can harm your character unless you hand it to them. These are not mere sayings. They are anchors meant to pull you back into yourself after years of drifting. At this stage, picture someone like Callan. For most of his life, he shaped himself around the expectations of others. His tone, his choices, even his dreams were molded by the people around him. If someone needed him to be strong, he became strong. If someone needed him to be quiet, he silenced himself. And because he was so adaptable, no one truly saw him for who he was. One evening, seated in his living room after a long and exhausting week, Callan realized something heartbreaking. He did not know what he wanted from his own life. Not really. He knew what others wanted. He knew what others expected. But when he tried to imagine his own desires, his mind was blank. He had lived so long as a reflection that he forgot how to be a person. Here's where the transformation begins. Identity is not built in grand gestures. It is built in the quiet decisions you make each day, the decisions that realign you with yourself. You reclaim your identity when you start choosing from your own center rather than from fear or habit. You reclaim it when you ask yourself, "What do I truly want?" and wait long enough to hear the real answer. You reclaim it when you stop shrinking so others can shine, when you stop apologizing for taking up space, and when you begin treating your own life as something worthy of respect. From here, imagine waking one morning with the intent to live differently, not louder or harder, but truer. You begin noticing where you compromise yourself and where you betray your own values. You start recognizing the moments when you pretend not to care just to keep the peace. And each time you catch yourself slipping into the old pattern, a new strength rises inside you. That strength is not aggression, it is not defiance, it is simply authenticity returning to its rightful place. At this stage, the Stoic principle of living in accordance with your nature becomes your compass. To the Stoics, your nature is not a personality type or a preference. It is the deepest, most honest expression of who you are when all pretenses fall away. When you live from that place, your life becomes steadier. Your choices become clearer, your relationships become healthier, and your self-respect becomes non-negotiable. You stop trying to mold yourself into what others approve of. Instead, you become someone whose presence carries weight, not because you demand it, but because you're anchored. Now imagine what happens as this anchored identity begins to take shape. People who once pushed your boundaries begin to step back, sensing the quiet shift in your energy. Those who treated you like a resource begin to feel the discomfort of facing their own imbalances. Some may drift away entirely, realizing they cannot control someone who has found their center again. But those who value truth, respect, and reciprocity draw closer. They recognize the difference between the version of you who lived to be accepted and the version standing before them now, calm, rooted, no longer bending out of fear. Here's where the message sharpens. When you rebuild your identity, you do not become someone new. You become someone whole. You return to yourself after years of scattering your pieces across people who never earned them. You rediscover the strength that was buried under obligation. You reclaim the dignity that was eroded by neglect. You learn, as the Stoics taught, that no external approval can replace internal integrity. From here, imagine a moment of deep stillness. You are alone, not lonely. You are quiet, not silenced. You are thoughtful, not overthinking. This is the moment when identity settles into your bones. You look at your own reflection, not with shame or confusion, but with recognition. You remember the person you were before life exhausted you. And you see the person you are becoming, a person shaped not by fear, but by intention. And as this chapter closes, a deeper question emerges like a lantern illuminating the path ahead. Once you reclaim your identity, how do you protect it in a world that constantly tries to reshape you? That question leads us into the next chapter. From here, imagine stepping into a new chapter of your life where the air feels sharper, not because the world has changed, but because you have. Your identity is no longer scattered, and your awareness no longer sleeps. You stand with both feet grounded, carrying a clarity you once thought was meant for other people. And as that clarity settles into you, a new challenge rises, the challenge of choosing the company you keep. This is where discernment becomes not just helpful, but essential. Because the moment you rebuild yourself, the world around you begins to reveal its true colors. Now imagine walking into a gathering where conversations hum softly, where laughter fills the corners of the room, where people move in and out of circles. Once, you might have entered this space searching for acceptance, scanning faces to see who might need you, who might pull at you, who might expect something from your kindness. But now, something has shifted. Instead of asking, "Who needs me?" you find yourself asking, "Who belongs near me?" A small but powerful difference. And in that single internal shift, the entire landscape of your relationships begins to rearrange itself. At this stage, the Stoics speak again, offering insights sharper than ever. Seneca wrote that we must walk with those who make us better and withdraw from those who pull us into chaos. Marcus Aurelius urged himself to avoid the corrupted, because the mind becomes shaped by those it sits beside. And Epictetus warned that no one keeps their inner peace intact while surrounding themselves with those who have none. These words are no longer ancient phrases, they are instructions, clear and uncompromising. Because the quality of your life begins to rise or fall based on the people who stand closest to you. From here, picture someone like Lysandra. She was warm-hearted, generous, always patient, the type of person others gravitated toward when their own lives were falling apart. For years, she welcomed everyone, those who honored her time and those who wasted it, those who appreciated her presence and those who consumed it. She believed kindness meant offering space to everyone, but over time, she watched her energy shrink and her joy dim. One afternoon, after a draining conversation with yet another person who saw her only as an emotional storage room, she sat alone and realized something painful. The people surrounding her did not reflect who she was. They reflected what she tolerated, and that realization changed everything. She began choosing differently, quietly, intentionally. And as she stepped away from those who drained her, her inner world began to breathe again. This is where your journey aligns with hers. Once you reclaim your identity, the next evolution is learning to protect it. Not by building walls of stone, but by building gates of discernment. Not everyone earns entrance. Not everyone deserves access. Not everyone gets to stand close enough to influence your spirit. This is not cruelty. This is wisdom, the very wisdom the Stoics lived by. They taught that the soul becomes shaped by what it allows in. If you allow disorder, you become disorder. If you allow negativity, you become negativity. But if you surround yourself with those who embody steadiness, dignity, courage, and truth, your own character strengthens in their presence. Now imagine the subtle signs that tell you who belongs and who does not. Pay attention to how your body feels when someone walks into your space. Do you tense? Do you breathe deeper? Do you feel drained even before they speak? Or do you feel expanded, grounded, safe? Your body knows. Your mind knows. Your spirit knows. Discernment is not an intellectual act. It is an instinct sharpened by experience. And as you walk further into this next stage of your life, that instinct becomes your compass. At this stage, a powerful truth emerges. Some people come into your life to add, and some come to subtract. Some lift the air around you, and some darken it. Some spark clarity, and some invite confusion. You cannot afford to treat these two groups the same. The Stoics understood this well. They believed that a wise person does not hate the unwise, but simply refuses to let their chaos contaminate his inner order. And that is exactly what this part of your journey requires, the courage to step back from those who use you, and the courage to step closer to those who match you. From here, imagine your life as a courtyard. Only those who honor the space should be allowed to enter. Those who bring storms must remain outside. Those who bring noise must be kept at a distance. Those who demand your energy but offer nothing in return must be uninvited. But those who bring calm, depth, loyalty, honesty, those who walk through the world with intention and integrity, those people deserve a seat beside you. And when you choose relationships this way, your entire existence begins to shift from survival to alignment. Here's where the message sharpens. Relationships are not about proximity. They are about resonance. You do not rise by standing next to the loudest people. You rise by walking beside the right ones. People who challenge you with kindness. People who mirror your strength. People who remind you of the person you are trying to become. And as you begin making these choices, something remarkable happens. Your life becomes lighter, calmer, stronger. You stop being drained. You stop being used. You stop being surrounded by the wrong souls. At this stage, imagine one final image. You are standing in a circle of people, not many, but the right ones. Their presence feels like steady ground. Their words feel like clarity. Their energy feels like peace. And in that moment, you finally understand. It was never about having many people around you. It was about having the right people around you. Those who match your principles. Those who respect your boundaries. Those who walk with you, not on you. And as this chapter closes, one question rises effortlessly into the silence. Now that you know how to protect your circle, how do you protect your spirit from the setbacks and storms that still await you? That question leads us into the next chapter. At this stage, imagine standing in the middle of your own life with a sense of clarity you've never truly allowed yourself to feel before. You've learned to choose what deserves your attention. You've begun rebuilding a solid identity. You've started shaping your circle with discernment instead of desperation. And now, something deeper begins to rise, a realization that power in life is not found in noise, nor in force, but in the quiet ability to walk away. The ability to let go without anger, to withdraw without bitterness, to step aside without announcing it to the world. This is where strength begins to reveal a sharper, quieter side of itself. Now imagine a moment where someone tries to pull you back into the chaos you've outgrown. They expect you to argue, to explain, to justify, to defend, but you don't. You simply choose silence. Not because you're afraid, but because you finally understand that not every battle deserves your presence. That not every conversation needs your energy. That not every person has earned the right to stand close enough to hear your voice. And in that silence, a new form of authority appears. An authority that comes from restraint, not reaction. From here, the Stoics become your anchor once again. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the greatest victory is the victory over yourself. Seneca taught that a wise person knows when to withdraw from what disturbs his peace. Epictetus reminded his students relentlessly that freedom begins the moment you stop trying to control what is not yours. This quiet discipline, the art of leaving, is one of the most powerful tools they ever passed down, not as an escape, but as a declaration. My peace is not for negotiation. Consider someone like Rowan. For years, Rowan lived in emotional tug-of-wars with people who thrived on chaos. Whenever someone disrespected him, he argued. Whenever someone lied, he confronted. Whenever someone demanded an explanation, he gave them one. He poured himself into every fire because he believed walking away meant losing. But one day, after yet another draining conflict, Rowan asked himself a question he had never dared to ask. Why do I stay in places that dim my spirit? The answer came not in words, but in a hollow sense of exhaustion. And in that exhaustion, the truth surfaced. He wasn't fighting to protect himself. He was fighting because he didn't know he was allowed to leave. This realization changed him, slowly at first, then all at once. The next time someone disrespected him, he didn't argue. He stepped back. When someone tried to pull him into emotional chaos, he didn't react. He breathed. When someone demanded a justification for his choices, he simply walked away. And the people who once held power over him suddenly found themselves powerless. Not because Rowan fought harder, but because he stopped fighting entirely. He mastered the art of departure, and in doing so, reclaimed the life he once surrendered. Now imagine embracing this same strength within yourself. Imagine choosing distance over drama, silence over explanation, restraint over reaction. You begin to realize that your energy is a sacred resource and not everyone deserves access to it. The moment you learn to walk away, you stop being controlled by other people's storms. You stop being pulled into their emotional battles. You stop being their solution, their target, or their outlet. Your life becomes more spacious. Your heart becomes lighter. Your mind becomes sharper. At this stage, reflect on something the Stoics understood with absolute clarity. Walking away is not avoidance. It is alignment. It is choosing what matches your values, your dignity, your direction. When you walk away from the wrong things, you are simultaneously walking toward the right ones. When you remove yourself from what weakens you, you create space for what strengthens you. When you stop explaining your worth to those who never valued it, you become stronger in your own eyes. Now, imagine your days shifting because of this new discipline. Fewer arguments, fewer misunderstandings, fewer emotional collisions, and more clarity, more peace, more control over your path. You stop being someone who reacts to negativity and instead become someone who refuses to participate in it. People who thrive on drama stop coming to you because they get nothing from your silence. People who once exploited your empathy lose their grip because you finally learn to withdraw your presence. People who once assumed you were always available now realize they no longer know your boundaries, and that uncertainty forces them to adjust. From here, imagine a moment when someone insists that you owe them an explanation for your choices. Instead of arguing, you look at them with the calmness of someone who has grown past the need for validation. You say nothing, you walk away, and that silence becomes a mirror they cannot escape. It shows them who they truly are, not because you shamed them, but because you refused to carry what was never yours. This is the quiet power of Stoic discipline. It is not loud, it is not vengeful, it is not reactive. It is the strength to choose your own direction without seeking permission. At the stage, your life begins to take on a different shape. Your presence becomes more intentional. Your relationships become more balanced. Your energy becomes more protected. And you realize something profound. Your ability to walk away is not a sign of coldness. It is a sign of mastery. The kind of mastery that comes from respecting your spirit more than your fears. The kind of mastery that comes from choosing your inner world over external chaos. And as this chapter settles into your bones, a new question begins to rise like a lantern in the dusk. Once you've learned to walk away from what harms you, how do you begin walking toward the version of yourself you were always meant to become? That question leads us into the next chapter. Entering this next chapter, imagine a quiet morning where sunlight falls across the floor in long, unbroken lines, steady, patient, unwavering. It mirrors the state you're stepping into now, a phase where strength is no longer a burst of effort, but a constant, disciplined presence. You've learned to walk away from what undermines you. But what happens after you walk away? What remains? What grows in the silence that follows? This is where the real shaping of your life begins, not through reaction or retreat, but through deliberate cultivation. The kind the Stoics believed made a human being unshakable from the inside out. As you breathe in this new stillness, imagine the ground beneath your feet becoming more solid with every intentional choice you make. You no longer chase noise. You no longer chase approval. You no longer chase validation disguised as affection. And because of that, something remarkable begins. Your life starts to organize itself around your values instead of your wounds. One thoughtful choice at a time, one quiet discipline after another. you begin to step into a version of yourself that you once doubted you could become: calm, precise, grounded. This is where the Stoics step beside you again, not as distant philosophers, but as companions who walked this same path centuries before you. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a person's true worth is measured by how steadily they keep their soul in alignment with reason, regardless of the storms around them. Seneca taught that discipline is freedom in disguise, because the disciplined mind is not ruled by impulses or fears. Epictetus insisted that a person becomes invincible when they master their own habits, not the habits of others. And now, in this moment, their teachings stop being ideas and start becoming tools you can actually use. At this stage, imagine someone like Elara. Her life used to look stable from the outside, but inside she felt like a house built on shifting ground. Every crisis shook her, every opinion changed her mood, every demand pulled her in directions she did not choose. And because she never cultivated daily discipline, her inner world stayed chaotic even when her outer world seemed calm. But one evening, standing alone in her kitchen, she realized she had built her life on emotional reactions instead of principles. She had become good at surviving but never learned how to stand, so she began to cultivate small disciplines, not to perform better for others, but to strengthen herself for her own sake. She started rising early, not to be productive, but to be present. She practiced saying one intentional sentence to herself each morning: "Let me meet today with clarity." She simplified her commitments. She carved out moments of silence. She challenged her impulses. She reflected on her choices each night, not with judgment, but with honesty. At first, these changes felt insignificant, like drops of water falling on stone. But over weeks and months, something shifted. She became less reactive, less chaotic, less easily swayed. Her presence grew quieter but also heavier, like someone who carries herself from a deeper place than emotion. She transformed not through grand acts, but through steady habits. And eventually she became the kind of person who does not lose herself when life tests her. Now imagine creating that same foundation within yourself. You begin your days with intention, a few minutes to breathe, to reflect, to ground yourself before the world's noise tries to claim you. You practice small acts of self-command, choosing when to speak, when to stay silent, when to act, and when to let go. You build routines that nourish your stability instead of eroding it. You treat your mind like a garden, pulling the weeds of unnecessary thoughts, watering the roots of clarity, trimming what grows wild and threatens your peace. From here, discipline becomes less of a burden and more of a compass. You start realizing that your habits shape your future more than your hopes ever could. That freedom is not the absence of structure, but the presence of the right structure. The Stoics knew this better than anyone. They believed that a disciplined life builds a disciplined spirit, and a disciplined spirit cannot be manipulated, shaken, or consumed. It is the kind of spirit that stays upright even in the harshest winds. Now imagine how this affects the way you respond to life. When someone behaves unpredictably, you remain steady because your stability comes from within. When circumstances shift suddenly, you adjust without falling apart because you've trained your mind to pivot without panic. When old patterns tempt you to crumble, your new habits hold you together like quiet anchors. You no longer collapse into chaos, you remain intact. And this ability to stay whole is what separates a life ruled by reaction from a life ruled by reason. At this stage, a new power begins to take hold. the power to create momentum. Discipline is no longer just about maintaining yourself. It becomes the force that slowly but surely pushes your life upward. You begin achieving goals not through pressure, but through consistency. You cultivate skills not through desperation, but through practice. You strengthen your character not through punishment, but through intention. You become someone who doesn't just survive life's storms. You become someone who grows stronger because of them. This is where the message sharpens. Discipline is not restriction. Discipline is expansion. It is the bridge between who you are and who you are capable of becoming. It is the quiet force that transforms your life from fragmented and reactive into cohesive and powerful. It is the internal structure that protects your mind from the world and protects the world from your impulses. From here, imagine looking back months from now, seeing how far you've traveled, not because of emotional intensity, but because of steady intention. You realize that every small, disciplined choice was a brick in the foundation of a life you never thought you could build. And as this chapter settles into your bones, a new question rises. Once discipline strengthens your inner world, how do you expand that strength outward into the way you work, act, and create? That question guides us into the next chapter. Entering this next chapter, imagine standing at the threshold of a life where your discipline no longer feels like a burden, but like a quiet force rising from within you. The storms that once tossed you around now seem distant, almost harmless, because you've forged a steadiness they can no longer touch. But as this steadiness grows, another truth begins to surface. Strength is not only about what you avoid, it is also about what you build. It is not enough to remove what drains you. You must now create what sustains you, and that requires something deeper than discipline. It requires purpose. Now imagine waking one morning with the strange, unsettling feeling that something in your life is missing, not because something is wrong, but because you are finally ready for more. More meaning, more direction, more alignment between who you are and what you do each day. The Stoics understood this moment well. They believed that a person loses themselves not through chaos, but through meaninglessness, not through noise, but through aimlessness. A life without a direction slowly hollows you from the inside. And so this stage of the journey turns towards something the Stoics held sacred: living life with deliberate purpose. As we step deeper into this new realization, feel the shift in your chest. Purpose does not shout. It does not demand attention. It appears like a soft pulse beneath the surface of your days. A rhythm you begin to notice only when the noise of others finally fades. And once you feel it, you cannot ignore it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that a life without purpose is a misalignment of the soul. Seneca warned that a person drifting without direction will blame the wind for every failure. And Epictetus insisted that no one can live well without knowing which life they are trying to live. Their message echoes through the centuries with razor clarity. Purpose is not optional. It is the backbone of a meaningful life. From here, imagine someone like Dalen. For years, he lived competently but not consciously. He woke up, worked, helped others, filled his days with obligations, and filled his evenings with exhaustion. He was reliable, responsible, efficient, but he was not alive. One afternoon, while sitting in traffic, he looked through the windshield and realized he couldn't remember the last time he felt excited about anything, not about his work, not about his days, not even about himself. His life was full, yet nothing inside him felt full. That realization hit him with the quiet force of truth. He had spent years supporting everything except his own direction. So Dalen made a small but radical change. He began each morning by asking himself one question: what is one thing today that aligns with the person I want to become? At first, he had no answer. But he kept asking, and slowly an inner compass began to form. He started reading more intentionally. He took long, solitary walks to let his thoughts settle. He began pursuing old fascinations he had abandoned. His life did not change overnight, but it began changing unmistakably. Instead of moving through life as a shadow, he began moving through it as a participant. Small acts of purpose reshaped him from the inside, and unexpectedly, the world around him began reshaping too. Now imagine applying this same intention to your own days. You begin noticing the tasks that nourish you and the ones that drain you. You start choosing projects that reflect your values. You reclaim hours you once wasted on things that meant nothing to you. Purpose begins to weave itself into your days, not through pressure, but through alignment. You are no longer running from emptiness. You are moving toward direction. Here's where the message sharpens. Purpose is not a grand mission. It is not a dramatic calling. It is a pattern of choices, small, consistent, aligned, a single thread woven through your days. The Stoics believed that the purpose of life was to live with excellence in whatever you chose, to embody your values in action, not in words. That is purpose, not a slogan, a standard. From here, imagine your life as a path through a forest. Without purpose, you drift between trees in circles. With purpose, every step becomes clearer. You recognize which direction is yours and which is a distraction. You stop reacting to every sound around you. You stop being pulled by every person who wants something from you. Purpose becomes the silent guide that draws you forward, not forcefully, but steadily. As this stage deepens, you begin to notice another transformation. Your confidence returns. Not the loud confidence that boasts or performs, but the grounded confidence of someone who knows where they're heading. You walk differently. You speak differently. People feel the change before you say a word. When you have purpose, your presence carries weight. You are no longer persuadable, no longer moldable, no longer vulnerable to the opinions of those who have no direction themselves. At this stage, imagine someone trying to sway you off your path. They question your choices. They laugh at your focus. They try to pull you back into the life you've outgrown. But instead of feeling threatened, you feel unmoved. Purpose steadies your spine. Purpose strengthens your voice. Purpose protects your time. Purpose removes your need for approval. You no longer ask, "What will they think?" but instead ask, "Does this align with who I'm becoming?" And that shift changes everything. Now imagine, months from now, looking back at the person you once were, the version of you who gave too much, who felt lost, who lived without direction. You will feel a quiet pride, not because you became someone new, but because you finally stopped abandoning yourself. Purpose becomes the thread that pulls your life into coherence, into meaning, into strength. And as this chapter comes to a close, a new question rises. If purpose shapes your direction, what shapes the way you carry that direction through difficulty? That question leads us into the next chapter. Advancing to this next chapter, imagine yourself standing at the edge of a calm lake just before dusk, the surface perfectly still, reflecting the sky with an honesty that almost startles you. This is where your life begins to show you something new, how clarity reveals what chaos once hid. The more centered you become, the more sharply you notice the things that still threaten your peace. The interruptions, the subtle manipulations, The small, quiet moments where the world tries to pull you back into the patterns you've outgrown. And in that still reflection, a new truth rises. Strength is not only about pursuing purpose, it is also about protecting your path from the forces that would quietly steal it. Now imagine someone trying to shake your calm, maybe with sarcasm, maybe with doubt, maybe with a small, cutting comment meant to provoke you. Before, you might have reacted instantly, offering explanations, defending yourself, or proving your intent. But now, something is different. You pause, you breathe, you let the moment pass through you instead of into you, and your lack of reaction unsettles them, because your silence is not fear, it is mastery. It is the mark of someone who no longer dances for the approval of those who cannot steady themselves. This is where your emotional strength becomes visible, not as a performance, but as presence. Here's where the Stoics step back into the conversation with you, not as distant philosophers, but as men who lived through constant interruptions and pressures. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the only true harm comes from letting external noise pierce the citadel of the mind. Seneca insisted that the insults of the petty should be met with the indifference of the wise. Epictetus reminded his students that provocation loses its power over the one who refuses to engage. These teachings echo now in your life, forming a shield between you and the chaos that once consumed you. At this stage, imagine someone like Cale. He used to be easily thrown off balance by criticism. One comment could drown him in self-doubt. One opinion could rewrite his mood. One disagreement could make his confidence crumble. But as his self-discipline grew and his sense of purpose sharpened, he began to see how much power he had been giving away. So he tried something new. The next time someone questioned his choices, he didn't justify. He didn't react. He listened, held his center, and let the moment pass. And in that small silence, he felt something shift. He felt the weight of other people's expectations falling away from him. He discovered that self-control is not merely the ability to suppress emotion. It is the ability to choose which emotions deserve to live inside you. From here, imagine applying this strength to your own life. Instead of responding impulsively, you begin responding intentionally. Instead of absorbing negativity, you begin observing it. Instead of being shaped by every external force, you begin shaping how you engage with the world. And slowly, you develop what the Stoics considered one of the rarest forms of power: emotional immunity. Not as coldness, not as numbness, but as clarity. The clarity that allows you to see provocation for what it is, not what it feels like. Now imagine how others react when you stop giving them power. The manipulators lose their grip. The critics lose their stage. The insecure lose their leverage. Even the loudest voices fall silent when they cannot pull you into their drama. And the irony is profound. Your silence speaks louder than any defense you could ever offer. Your calmness becomes a mirror that reflects the truth back at them. And so they retreat, leaving you with more space, more clarity, and more freedom to move forward. At this stage, your inner world begins to feel different. It becomes less noisy, less cluttered, less reactive. You begin trusting yourself in ways you never have before. When irritation rises, you breathe. When anger stirs, you observe. When someone tries to provoke you, you stand your ground, not with aggression, but with restraint. And in that restraint, you discover something the Stoics treasured deeply: the dignity of self-command. The ability to guide your own reactions rather than surrender to the reactions of others. From here, imagine the world testing you, not to break you, but to confirm your growth. Someone accuses you falsely. Someone dismisses your kindness. Someone betrays a confidence. Before, these moments would have shattered your peace. Now, they do not. Not because they don't hurt, but because they no longer define you. Your worth no longer hangs on external threads. It stands rooted in your own principles. You become the kind of person who does not fall apart when life becomes difficult. You bend, but you do not break. You feel, but you do not collapse. You care, but you do not surrender yourself. Here's where your strength becomes unshakable. You stop living defensively. You stop fearing judgment. You stop wasting energy on those who thrive on conflict. And you start seeing challenge as the Stoics did, not as opposition, but as training. Every interruption becomes a chance to practice calm. Every insult becomes a chance to practice clarity. Every disappointment becomes a chance to practice resilience. Life stops hurting you in the same way because you stop receiving it in the same way. As this chapter nears its close, imagine yourself once again at the edge of that calm lake. The reflection is clearer now, sharper, steadier, whole. You see a person who is no longer shaped by fear, nor bent by pressure, nor wounded by every passing opinion. You see someone who remains anchored in their own values, no matter how the world shifts around them. This is the quiet strength the Stoics lived for. This is the emotional mastery that protects your purpose and preserves your peace. And as this realization settles into your spirit, another question rises gently from beneath the surface. If you can now withstand the storms outside, how do you begin expanding the strength within so your life itself becomes a force that lifts others without losing yourself in the process? That question carries us forward into the next chapter. Advancing to the next chapter, imagine a long, quiet night where you sit alone at a table, a cup of warm tea in your hands, and for the first time in years, you realize something unexpected. You are no longer drowning in the chaos of other people. The storms that once consumed you now pass without tearing you apart. Your purpose stands like a lamp in the distance. Your emotional strength feels steadier than it ever has. But as you sit there in that quiet, another truth dawns on you. Strength is not only about protecting yourself from the world, it is also about choosing what kind of impact you wish to make on it. And that impact must come from a place of clarity, not sacrifice, intention, not exhaustion, wisdom, not impulse. Now imagine the days that follow. You wake up with a sharper sense of who you are. You move through your hours with purpose. You are no longer easily swayed by expectations. You no longer fear disappointing those who demand too much. But something deeper begins stirring beneath the surface, a question that arrives gently, like the first light before sunrise. How do I live in a way that strengthens not only myself, but everything I touch? This question shifts the journey again, because a life grounded in Stoic wisdom is not merely a life of self-protection, it is a life of contribution in a way that does not destroy you. As we enter this stage, the Stoics walk beside you with new teachings. Seneca wrote that the mind becomes rich not by receiving more, but by needing less. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that a human being exists not for isolation, but to offer something meaningful to the world. And Epictetus insisted that the greatest gift you can give anyone is the example of a well-governed life. These teachings do not ask you to sacrifice yourself. They ask you to strengthen yourself so deeply that your presence becomes a form of service without effort. At this point, imagine someone like Mira. Her early life was a constant cycle of overgiving. She helped everyone. She cleaned up emotional disasters she didn't cause. She filled every silence with comfort. She offered her time, her energy, her patience until she had nothing left, and people praised her for it. The way people praise a candle for burning so beautifully, never noticing that the candle is disappearing inch by inch. When she eventually collapsed into exhaustion, she disappeared from the world for months, not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally. She could not give any more because she had nothing left to give. Then, one day, sitting alone in a small cafe, something shifted. She watched a child build a tower out of wooden blocks. He placed one carefully, then stepped back and studied it. When the tower fell, he did not cry or panic. He simply picked up the pieces and built again, slower, more focused. And Mira realized she had exhausted herself by trying to keep everyone else's towers standing. She had never built her own. That moment became the beginning of a new life for her. A life where she learned to contribute from a place of grounded strength rather than frantic generosity. From here, imagine adopting this same shift. You begin asking yourself, not how much can I give, but how can I give without losing myself? You stop pouring from an empty vessel. You stop giving what you don't have. You stop offering rescues to people who refuse to save themselves. And instead, you begin offering what the Stoics valued most: presence, steadiness, clarity, example. Not everyone will understand this at first. Some will call you distant. Some will call you cold. Some will miss the version of you who bowed under the weight of their expectations. But the people who truly belong in your life will adjust. They will rise toward your strength rather than drag you back into your old patterns. Now imagine applying this idea to your daily interactions. When someone brings their anger to you, you offer calm, not because you are suppressing your feelings, but because you refuse to multiply chaos. When someone seeks validation, you offer truth, not cruelty, but honesty, guided by virtue. When someone tries to manipulate you emotionally, you offer boundaries, not walls, but gates. When someone brings gratitude, you offer your full presence, not distracted, but intentional. This is contribution without self-erosion. This is kindness without self-destruction. At this stage, a deeper understanding begins forming. Your best contribution to the world is the way you carry yourself through it. Not in grand gestures, not in constant sacrifice, but in the stability you embody. The Stoics believed that a disciplined and virtuous person becomes a living standard, a quiet force that elevates others simply by being steady. When your behavior stays aligned with your values, it invites others to align theirs. When your words come from reason instead of impulse, you remind others of their own reason. When your actions are measured and calm, they reflect the kind of life many people aspire to but seldom reach. From here, your life begins to shift again. People come to you not to drain you but to learn from you, not to take advantage but to walk beside you. The world responds differently because you engage with it differently. You listen without absorbing. You help without overextending. You care without collapsing. You guide without controlling. You offer wisdom without preaching. And slowly you realize that the world does not need you to burn. It needs you to shine in a way that does not consume you. Now imagine standing in front of a younger version of yourself. The version who used kindness as a shield, who feared boundaries, who believed that self-sacrifice was the same as goodness. Imagine looking into their tired eyes and saying, "You can still be kind." But you do not have to disappear to do it. That is the essence of this chapter. contribution without self-erasure, kindness without martyrdom, strength without hardness. At this stage, another Stoic truth rises. You cannot guide others if you cannot govern yourself. You cannot uplift others if you are collapsing internally. You cannot lead others to clarity while you drown in your own confusion. And so the journey continues, not to make you less kind, but to make your kindness sustainable. Not to pull you away from the world, but to bring you back into it with boundaries, principles, and inner fire intact. As this chapter draws to a close, imagine one last image. You are standing at the top of a hill at sunrise. The world below is quiet. The sky is opening. And you feel something indescribable, a sense that your life is no longer happening to you, but unfolding through you. Not as an accident, but as a deliberate creation. Not as a reaction, but as a choice. And with that realization comes a final question. If you can now offer strength without draining yourself, how do you begin shaping a future that aligns fully with the person you have become? That question leads us into the next chapter. Advancing into the next chapter, imagine walking through a long corridor, lit only by faint lamps along the walls. Each step echoes softly, steady and deliberate, and for the first time in your life, you're not rushing. You're not being pushed forward by fear, nor pulled backward by obligation. You're moving at a pace chosen by you. And as you follow this path, you begin to understand that all the strength you've gathered so far, the discipline, the purpose, the detachment, the clarity, has been preparing you for something larger, something quieter, something deeper, the shaping of the future you want to live. Now imagine pausing at the end of that corridor, your hand resting lightly on the door to the next room. The air on the other side feels different. Not threatening, not chaotic, just unknown. And that unknown stirs something in you, not fear, but anticipation. Because this is the moment when you begin creating a life not defined by what hurt you, but defined by what calls to you. The Stoics understood this moment intimately. They believed that a person's future is not built in grand declarations, but in the simple, steady alignment of action with principle. Nothing more, nothing less. From here, consider how your days begin to transform. Your habits, once scattered, now form a rhythm. Your choices, once reactive, now feel intentional. Your boundaries, once forced, now feel natural. And slowly, without fanfare, you begin stepping into a new kind of existence. One shaped not by kindness that destroyed you, but by wisdom that strengthens you. This is where you start designing your life instead of merely surviving it. At this stage, imagine someone like Theron. For years, his life felt like a collection of unfinished stories. He dreamed of writing, but never began. He dreamed of traveling, but always postponed. He dreamed of building something meaningful, but each day slipped through his fingers like water. He thought he lacked talent, or opportunity, or timing. But the truth was simpler. He lacked direction. He spent so long tending the needs of others that he forgot his own life required tending too. One evening, seated alone as the last light of day faded, he realized that nothing external was stopping him. He simply hadn't chosen himself yet. And once he made that decision, life opened. He started with one page, one small trip, one meaningful project. He stopped waiting for permission. He stopped apologizing for his desires. He stopped delaying his own growth. And with every small act that aligned with who he wanted to become, his future shifted subtly but unmistakably. Momentum replaced hesitation. Clarity replaced doubt. Direction replaced drift. He didn't transform through intensity, he transformed through consistency. Now imagine bringing this same intention into your own life. You begin asking yourself questions that cut deeper than before. What kind of life would I be proud to look back on? What am I willing to build, one small action at a time? Which dreams have I buried beneath the needs of others? These questions are not overwhelming. They are guiding. They do not demand perfection. They demand sincerity. And when you answer sincerely, the path ahead becomes clearer. Here's where the Stoics offer another timeless reminder. The future is not owed to you. It is shaped by you. Epictetus taught that no person becomes great by accident. Marcus Aurelius insisted that each day must be treated as a lifetime in miniature. Seneca wrote that the tragedy is not that life is short, but that we waste so much of it. These teachings are not warnings, they are invitations. Invitations to step into the life that calls you before it becomes too late to answer. From here, imagine how your days begin to feel different when you finally honor your own direction. You stop waking with dread. You stop drifting through routines that suffocate you. You stop giving your best energy to people who drain it. Instead, your mornings carry a quiet sense of intention. Your afternoons carry focus. Your evenings carry fulfillment. You begin designing a life that reflects who you are, not who the world tried to mold you into. The shift is subtle but profound. You stop being a passenger and become the builder. At this stage, you will also face a familiar obstacle, doubt. Doubt whispers that you are too late, too behind, too damaged, too uncertain. But the Stoics knew that doubt is merely a noise produced by old versions of yourself that fear being replaced. And they will be replaced, not through force, but through quiet, consistent creation. Every time you choose action over avoidance, you weaken the grip of doubt. Every time you choose alignment over approval, you break another link in the chains that once held you still. Now imagine the people around you as you begin stepping into your future. Some will support you, some will misunderstand you, some will be threatened by your growth because your changes expose their stagnation. But this doesn't deter you anymore. You've learned to walk away without bitterness. You've learned to choose without fear. You've learned to move forward without dragging anyone with you. And in doing so, your life begins to rise, not because the world became easier, but because you became clearer. From here, envision one image that captures the essence of this chapter. You are standing at a crossroads, holding a lantern lit by everything you've learned, your boundaries, your discipline, your emotional strength, your reclaimed identity, your purpose. The paths before you are many, but each one glows faintly when it aligns with your values. You follow the path that glows the brightest, not because it is the easiest, but because it is the truest. And each step forward becomes an act of self-respect. As this chapter grows toward its close, you begin to understand something profound. A meaningful future is not something you wait for, it is something you build with your daily choices. Your future is shaped in how you speak to yourself, how you treat your time, how you honor your boundaries, how you respond to challenge, how you carry your values into every room you enter. You don't need a grand strategy, you need a steady one. And now, with all this clarity settling into you, a final question rises, gentle but undeniable. Now that you know how to build a future that reflects who you truly are, how do you sustain it when life inevitably tests your foundation? That question guides us forward into what comes next. As we close this chapter together, take a moment to breathe and let these insights settle. Kindness is a strength, but it becomes unbreakable only when guided by wisdom. If today's message gave you clarity or helped you see yourself differently, feel free to subscribe so you can keep growing with each new lesson. Share your thoughts with the words, "I choose clarity, so I know you are walking this path with intention." Keep your heart open, protect your energy, and stay ready, because the next